In the luminous heart of the galaxy, known as Arcane's Spiral, on the planet Valoria Prime, there existed a being whose name was whispered across star systems with both reverence and unease. She was Seraphine, the alien woman without an heir, a ruler of unmatched intellect and beauty, whose existence defied the natural laws of life and death. Her silver skin shimmered under Valoria Prime's twin suns, and her eyes, deep pools of violet, seemed to hold galaxies within them. Yet for all her power, Seraphine bore a secret sorrow. She had no heir. In Valorian culture, heirs were the vessel of legacy, the living continuation of one's soul and wisdom. Without an heir, her reign, no matter how brilliant, would vanish like a dying star. But as centuries passed, it became painfully clear Seraphine was cursed, or blessed, with immortality. Death, the natural and inevitable force that claimed all, could not touch her. For decades, Seraphine sought a way to break this impasse. Her scientists had combed the edges of the universe for rare genetic matter, and her mystics had performed rituals under moons that shone with colors unseen by human eyes. Nothing could produce an heir. And so, she ruled, brilliant but isolated, commanding respect yet never forming a bond deep enough to give her the continuation she longed for. The arrival of the stranger. It was during the cycle of twin eclipses, an event that occurred once every 3 centuries, that a strange vessel appeared in orbit around Valoria Prime. Its metal hull was jagged and unfamiliar, and its engine left trails of green ionized particles, unlike any known Valorian design. The Council of Elders convened immediately, fearing an invasion. Seraphine, however, felt no fear. She walked barefoot across the crystalline floor of her throne room, her presence commanding silence. Her gaze fixed on the vessel through the high observatory windows. The ship landed with a thunderous pulse, shaking the ground beneath her palace. A hatch hissed open, revealing a being entirely unlike any Valorian. He was human, tall, with dark hair and a calm, measured demeanor. His eyes, a piercing gray, held a quiet intelligence. "I am Kalen," he said in flawless Valorian, a language no outsider typically mastered. "I come from the Soul System, seeking knowledge, not conquest." The elders murmured, suspicious. Seraphine, however, felt an unexplainable pull. "Knowledge?" she asked, stepping closer. "Then perhaps you can explain something none of us have yet understood, how one can create life without ever succumbing to death." Kalen tilted his head, intrigued. "You mean immortality?" Seraphine smiled, a gesture both cold and melancholic. "Yes. I have lived for 600 cycles, and I have yet to leave a legacy. I am the alien woman without an heir, and death has forsaken me. Can you help me, human?" Kalen studied her, silent for a long moment. "Perhaps," he said finally. "But know this. To create life, one must first understand the balance between giving and letting go. You cannot force legacy. It must be born, not claimed." The experiment. Days turned into weeks as Seraphine and Kalen worked together. She introduced him to her laboratories, where quantum genetic matrices floated in zero-gravity chambers and mystic conduits hummed with energy from Valoria's twin moons. Kalen, human though he was, had a mind capable of seeing patterns where others saw chaos. He began to combine Valorian mysticism with human genetic understanding. Slowly, a new possibility emerged, an heir that could inherit Seraphine's essence without binding her immortality. Yet, the process was dangerous. Any miscalculation could annihilate not only Seraphine's genetic material, but also the very quantum matrix holding Valoria Prime in balance. Seraphine's advisors warned her. "No outsider has ever been allowed to touch the core matrix. they cautioned. "It is the heart of our civilization." Seraphine only replied, "Some boundaries are meant to be crossed when eternity is at stake." The experiment began during the lunar convergence, when Valoria's 3 moons aligned perfectly, amplifying the energy flowing through the planet. Kaelin worked tirelessly, calibrating instruments, while Seraphine channeled her life force into the matrix. Hours turned into days. The air hummed with the tension of creation itself. Finally, a pulse of light erupted from the core, blinding the lab for a moment. When the glow faded, a small figure floated within the containment sphere. A child, but not entirely human, not entirely Valorian. Its eyes shimmered with violet and gray, a perfect blend of Seraphine and Kaelin. Seraphine fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "An heir," she whispered. "I have an heir." Kaelin watched her, noting the vulnerability in the immortal woman's expression. "Remember," he said gently, "life is its own teacher. You cannot shield them from the universe, but you can guide them." The threat emerges. News of the creation spread across Arcane's spiral like wildfire. Many saw Seraphine's success as a threat. The Nerathian Empire, a militaristic civilization obsessed with conquest, sent emissaries demanding the child be surrendered, claiming it as a weapon capable of tipping galactic scales. Seraphine refused. She would not yield her heir, the symbol of her legacy, to those who sought only power. War seemed inevitable. Kaelin, though human, displayed a courage that surprised even Seraphine. He helped fortify Valoria Prime's defenses, designing strategies that combined Valorian technology with human ingenuity. Yet even with their preparation, they knew the Empire's forces were vast and relentless. When the Nerathians finally attacked, the battle was apocalyptic. Starships clashed above Valoria Prime, lasers turning night into day. The ground shook as colossal war machines advanced across the crystal plains. Seraphine herself entered the battlefield, her immortality making her nearly invincible. She wielded energy blades that could slice through Nerathian armor as if it were glass, and her psychic powers disrupted enemy communications. Kaelin fought alongside her, a calm storm in the chaos. He protected the child at all costs, understanding that the future of life itself rested in the balance. Hours passed, and yet the Nerathians would not relent. Just as Seraphine began to tire, a strange phenomenon occurred. The child, sensing danger, extended a hand, and a radiant wave of energy erupted outward, halting the attackers. Nerathian ships faltered, their engines melting under the alien force. The child had inherited not only Seraphine's immortality, but also her latent psychic abilities, magnified by Kaelin's genetic input. The battle ended before it had truly begun. The Nerathians, terrified of a power they could not control, retreated. Legacy and revelation. In the aftermath, Seraphine held the child in her arms. "You see," Kaelin said softly, "you cannot be immortal without leaving something behind. This child, this life, is your legacy." Seraphine realized the truth in his words. For centuries, she had feared death because it had never come. But now, she understood that immortality without connection was hollow. It was not enough to survive. One must create, nurture, and eventually let go. The child grew rapidly, Valorian time accelerated by design, and Seraphine taught them the ways of the galaxy. But unlike before, she allowed herself to feel fully. Joy, fear, hope. She was no longer just a ruler or an immortal being. She was a mother. Kaelin, too, found his place, not as a ruler, but as a guide and protector. He marveled at the bond forming between Seraphine and her heir, a bond that transcended species and time. Centuries later, when Seraphine finally chose to step back from the throne, she looked at the galaxy not with fear of the unknown but with confidence in the future. She had conquered the ultimate challenge, not death itself, but the emptiness of living without leaving a mark. The child, now fully grown, a blend of Valorian wisdom and human ingenuity, took the throne with grace and power. Under their rule, Valoria Prime flourished, a beacon of hope and unity in the galaxy. Seraphine, immortal yet at peace, watched from her observatory as stars were born and civilizations rose and fell. Death had never touched her, but she had finally understood life. She had an heir, a legacy, and a future that would echo through the ages. And so, in the vastness of space, where stars burned and planets spun in eternal dance, the alien woman without an heir, yet untouched by death, smiled. She had achieved the impossible. She had created life, left her mark, and discovered that even immortality could be enriched by love and... In the aftermath of the battle, Seraphine cradled her heir, feeling warmth for the first time in centuries. She realized that immortality alone had never been her true power. It had been the ability to create, to nurture, to leave something of herself in the universe. Kalen stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You've done it," he said. "You've broken the cycle of loneliness and fear. You've created a future that even death cannot touch." Seraphine's violet eyes glistened as she looked upon the child, whose eyes held both her own depth and Kalen's sharp intelligence. This is what I was missing," she whispered. "A life to care for, a life to guide. I am no longer just a ruler. I am something more." Years passed, and the child, named Arindra, grew swiftly under the combined tutelage of Seraphine and Kalen. Arindra's powers developed at an extraordinary rate, blending Valorian psychic abilities with human ingenuity. She could manipulate energy, sense the thoughts of others, and even heal wounds that should have been fatal. But most importantly, she carried the wisdom, compassion, and courage of her mother. Seraphine, for the first time, felt time passing not as an endless burden, but as a gift. She watched civilizations flourish, alliances form, and planets unite under a common purpose. Valoria Prime itself became a sanctuary for knowledge, peace, and exploration, drawing scholars and travelers from across galaxies. Yet, Seraphine did not remain on the throne. She chose instead to walk among her people, teaching them, guiding them, and sharing her knowledge of the cosmos. Kalen became her trusted advisor and protector, a reminder that even immortals need companionship. One evening, as the twin suns set over Valoria Prime, casting the skies in hues of violet and gold, Seraphine watched Arindra stand at the balcony of the newly rebuilt palace. "Mother," Arindra said, her voice steady yet filled with warmth, "I understand now. Legacy isn't just surviving, it's the love, the guidance, and the choices we leave behind. I will lead with that in mind." Seraphine smiled, a rare, unguarded expression that spoke of centuries of hope finally fulfilled. "And I will watch you, my child, as life finally flows through what I could not create alone." Centuries passed, and stories of Seraphine, Kalen, and Arindra became legend throughout the Arcanes spiral. Scholars, poets, and historians recounted the tale of the alien woman who defied death, of the human who bridged worlds, and of the child who embodied the union of two species. When Seraphine finally chose to retreat into the quiet observatories of Valoria Prime, she did not fear the end. Though death could not claim her, she no longer longed for it. She had discovered life in its fullest form: legacy, love, and purpose. She had left the galaxy not only an heir, but also a path toward unity and enlightenment. From the highest tower, she gazed upon the stars, her immortal heart at peace. She saw novas ignite, civilizations rise and fall, and the eternal dance of planets and suns. And in the quiet hum of the cosmos, she realized that immortality without connection was meaningless, but immortality with love and legacy was the truest form of power. The alien woman without an heir, once feared, envied, and isolated, had finally conquered not death itself, but the loneliness that came with it. She had given life, shaped the future, and discovered the ultimate truth, that even in the vast, infinite galaxy, no being truly exists alone if they choose to leave a part of themselves behind. And so, as Valoria Prime's twin moons rose together in perfect harmony, Seraphine smiled for the first time in 600 cycles, not as a ruler, not as an immortal, but as a mother, a mentor, and a woman who had finally transcended the limits of fate.